Good evening. Welcome, everyone. This is a special meeting of the League of Women Voters, where we have a representative from Clean Water Action here. And I'm going to, without any further ado, I'm going to introduce her. This is Tia Ryan. She's Program Director for Clean Water Action of New Jersey. She's spoken for us before about the problems with the water in New Jersey, and specifically in Essex County and Newark. So without further ado, Tia Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought he was gonna talk more about himself and all that good stuff, give me some time, but he's like, no, get up there. Well, thank you everyone for having me. It's a pleasure to be here again and talk about the issues that mostly impact our community. Do you need more? And I know there's a lot of questions. I come to bring answers, and I hope that I can answer all your questions and kind of ease some of your worry, and then give you proactive ways that you can contribute to your community. And yeah, let's get started. So as Ron said, I am the program development coordinator for Clean Water Action, and I initially started, before I have the position that I have now in this state office, I initially started with Clean Water Action as the field director for the Newark lead service line replacement program. So that's how I do know a little bit of history, a lot of bit of history about what's currently going on. And just to get those of you up to speed who may have some gaps. So in about 2015, Newark's parts per billion of lead registered to 15.8 parts per billion in certain areas. And according to the federal government, you cannot go over 15 parts per billion without letting the public know, without taking action. So although children are supposed to be exposed to 0 parts per billion, but they give you the 15 parts per billion. And so I don't know exactly how it started, but I do know the city of Newark and the mayor, they got $75 million to replace service lines. Now, initially, it was supposed to be 10 phases over an 8-year period, or 8 phases over a 10-year period. And they partnered with Clean Water Action, and we went door to door, and we had our feet on the ground. We did community outreach, and we spoke to the residents about the program. Now, the way the program works before, I'll give you the update now with how it works, but the way it worked initially was that as a homeowner, and you had to be a homeowner, we know that 75 to 80% of Newark is renters. So, we had a hurdle with that alone to try to track down homeowners that may live in other states. But you had to be a homeowner to sign up for the program. And with the program, you receive a subsidy of a 90% discount. So depending on the size of your home and the distance from the curb or to the main line in the middle of the street, which is owned by the city of Newark, you had to pay with the subsidy, about $5,000 to $10,000. That was before the subsidy, I'm sorry. So it'll be cost about $5,000 to $10,000 to replace. With the subsidy, it will cost you about $500 to $1,000. That's it. You get a 90% discount, and you did not have to pay that portion prior to getting your pipes replaced. You could set it up to add it to your water bill. You can cut it up into installments. Whatever it is, the overall objective was to make sure that, like the papers say that I gave you, that you could take back the tap, right? We want to make sure that you can drink from the tap water. We did partner with the city of Newark to make sure that everyone did have filters. Clean Water Action does not really believe in giving out filters. We do not believe in giving out water bottles, but it was a step. It was a means to an end, so we needed immediate action, and although it's temporary, that was an immediate action. Make sure they at least can turn on the faucet in their kitchens, in their bathrooms. Make sure that they can at least have some type of security when they felt secure about drinking water. So, and as a sidebar, I did see, last time I was here, there was this documentary about Sasol. What was it called again? It was in Louisiana. Mossville? Yeah, it was called Mossville. Did you guys see that? Oh, were you touched by that? Oh my God. My favorite part, well, nothing was favorite about it, but you know what I mean? Like, it was a really, like, that gut wrenching that made me say, you must see this. One of my favorite parts was the aerial view of when you can see just his house and everything around it was just flattened. And you can see him during this entire experience, kind of like his health was degrading right before our eyes. And because of that, it was this company called Sasol, right? They came in and wanted to take it over. They originated in Africa, right? South Africa to be exact. And they came to make America a little small South Africa. Now, a company like Sasol creates plastics. And it's things like water filters and water bottles that keep businesses like Sasol in business, right? So Clean Water Action does not believe in giving out water filters, water bottles. We try to think about how we recycle. Recycling is a good thing, but we do try to implement and educate the community about preventative measures on what we can do to prevent even the need and the amount of recycling we need to do, right? So back to the lead service line replacement program. So we did that, and then now recently, on top of the $75 million that the city was able to receive, they recently received an additional $120 million from the state. And that actually puts us in an awesome position. And I know there's a lot of backlash. I know there's a lot of comparisons to Flint when it comes to Newark and its surrounding cities, but it's a completely different scenario, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But what the city of Newark is doing right now is amazing, and it might not sound like it because of what you hear through word of mouth or through media, but it's amazing, and I'm going to tell you why. They are replacing 18,000 pipes, right? And the time frame of that is 3 years. That is unheard of. I've never heard of an entire city replacing all their pipes in a 3-year period. That is literally unheard of. It does not happen. And then on top of it, only 14,000 of those pipes came from the Wanacue water source. And no, the Pequannock water source. The other 400 came from Pequannock that they're replacing. And he just said, because Newark has 2 water supplies, Wanacue and Pequannock. The one that was most affected by the lack of erosion and the coating material in the pipes that let the lead actually leach into the water, because the water is okay. It's not the water. The water supply is okay. It's literally the pipes. So the ones that are most affected, they said, okay, we're definitely going to replace those, but we're also going to replace additional pipes. We're just going to replace the entire Newark, which is awesome. But not only that, you have towns like Montclair and Hillside that actually share our water supply. So into addition of the homes that are being replaced and the pipes that are replaced in the homes in Newark, they're actually also replacing the pipes that are affected that have the same water supply as Newark. So it's not just Newark, it is surrounding cities. You have towns like Bloomfield that do share Newark's water supply, but those pipes don't need to be replaced because they come from the Wanacue water supply. Wanacue. They come from the Wanacue water supply. So somewhere like Bloomfield shares Newark's water supply, but it's Wanacue. Somewhere like Hillside shares Newark water supply, but it's Pequannock. So since we know that Pequannock is the one that's most affected, we're changing everything that has access to the Pequannock water supply, and that doesn't include only Newark. It includes Hillside, includes areas of Montclair. And it's not the entire Hillside, it's not the entire Montclair. No, it's not the source. The water source, we tested it, is fine. It's been tested over and over and over again. It's not the water source at all. It's literally the pipes. And so the infrastructure around the country, this is not like an isolated incident. The infrastructure around the country is just old, right? We use lead pipes. The thing is, we started ages ago using a coating to make sure that the lead doesn't actually leach into the water. So it's not to say that people don't have lead pipes around the country, it's just they have a coating that they use so that it doesn't leach into the water. So before, when it was leaching into the water, because you wouldn't want lead to get in the water, you know, the coating wasn't working and it was eroding, we would say, hey, you have to flush your pipes, right? Because your water is sitting. But now we're telling you, you have to flush it for a different reason, because in order for the coating to actually coat the pipes, you have to run the water. Right, so even when your pipes are changed, you still have to flush the coating through. And you know, some people, there was a recent test that was done where they said the water filters weren't working, but that was, if I'm not mistaken, a very small percentage. Do you know the percentage? It was 3%. I thought it was 4. I didn't want to get it. See, that's why I double checked. So it was 3% that the filters did not work, right? That's what they were saying. They didn't work. The lead levels were high. Some as high as 60 parts per billion. Some as high as 90 parts per billion, depending on which area of Newark that they tested the water. But then we found out that they were not flushing. So it's not a matter of the coating's not working, the pipes isn't working, like nothing's working, the filter isn't working. That's not the remedy. It's important to know those steps that need to be taken in order for this to be a successful process, in order for us to, like I said, take back the tap. That's our overall objective. We don't want people to be dependent on water filters and water bottles. That's not healthy. That's not something that's good for our planet. If you guys are all here, you're here because you care about not only what happens to our bodies, but what happens to our planet. And that's something that's just going to add towards the destruction of it. We're like in October and we're at 90-degree weather. Like, I'm exaggerating, it's like 80 degrees, but there should be no reason why we're sweating in October. Do you remember, I was talking to a woman earlier, and it was like a state law where you have to, I think it's still in effect, you have to turn on the heat in apartment buildings like the 1st or the 15th. I checked, it's actually the 1st. They say the 15th, but it's actually the 1st, so we've been like violating the law by those 2 weeks. But you don't have to turn on the heat anymore. That's crazy. We don't have to turn on the heat anymore. It's so hot, we don't have to do that. I remember when it used to be cold, waiting for the 1st to get there just so they can turn on the heat. You don't have to turn it anymore. And things like the overusage of plastic, like water bottles and water filters, contributes to that, right? It contributes to what we put in the environment and thereby what we put in our bodies. I was rambling on, but I would love to know if you have any questions and I can zero in on a specific topic. Yes?
Could you circle back to the specific Montclair focus of the water supply being shared and what the impact is for Montclair specifically in our water? Are we chronic?
Wait, I can give you this. Okay. You good? Okay. Go ahead. Wait, so you said you want to know
The specific Montclair impact.
Yes.
Are we chronic? Are we Wanacue? What is our impact with the lead?
Yes. So
We know it's your filters.
yes. So most of Newark does not share the water supply. I mean, the most of Montclair does not share the same water supply as Newark, but there is a small area that does, and the area that does is coming from the Pequannock water supply.
No, Montclair gets its water from
Wanacue?
Montclair reservoirs.
Wait, so it's
That's
Bloomfield?
our water, and the other 30% in the summertime comes from wells.
So Bloomfield comes from Wanacue.
Correct.
Hillside comes from Pequannock.
I can't tell you, I don't know.
Yeah.
Montclair, it's from
Wanacue. I keep mixing them up. Okay, so it's Bloomfield that comes from Wanacue. Hillside comes from Pequannock, but it's not the entire area. It's literally not the entire area. And Montclair comes from Wanacue. Yes, it does.
Which is the affected source? Well, that led the lines from Wanacue.
Yes.
So what areas of Montclair? How would we know?
I don't know the exact streets because I actually did my...
What areas of Montclair and how would the owners know?
all your water is blended, and it comes from those two surface water sites, which is, again, Wanakee and Monksville reservoirs. And again, in the summer, when water usage goes up,
It goes to the
people water their
reservoir.
lawns, we can also draw from 3 municipal wells that we have, which are Glenfield, Lorraine Avenue, if you can picture that, and Rand Park, those buildings there, those are the 3 wells. But primarily it just comes from those reservoirs. That's our supply. And just for perspective, don't forget, it's coming to us first before
It does.
goes to Newark. And Newark should think it's going to Newark and then come back to us.
It does.
And so there's no lead issue for Montclair.
I don't understand, if it's not in the water, why is one reservoir different than the other in terms of the results?
Because they used a different coding system. They switched it over. So like I said, it is not the water supply, but because they switched the water coding, the chemical coding in one that they did not switch in the other, that's the reason one supply is affected but not the other. But in this instance, they're just saying we're going to fix everything because technically it's still a coding. So what if in a few years, a decade, that coding now needs to be changed? Then we're back to square one. So they said, okay, we'll just fix the entire city and surrounding cities who are affected.
So Hillside and other towns that are affected, are those towns paying for their own pipes, or is it coming from that one?
The $120 million and the $75 million. So actually, it's not the entire Hillside. I'm just telling you, it's the same instance how it is in Montclair. It's not the entire Hillside. I don't want to freak anyone out, but I do want you guys to be informed that there is a portion of Hillside that also shares the same water from the same water source. So they are fixing that part of the $120 million. It would not be up to the residents. It is included in the additional $120 million on top of the $75 million. Yes.
The residents of New York satisfied with the response they're getting?
Satisfied with the response?
They're getting, so, change of the pipes, are they happy with, not compared to Flint, but Flint, they're not satisfied.
Yeah, awesome question. So I haven't been in the field in a while, but I think that there are mixed responses, and it's mostly due to a lack of knowledge, right? So the mayor of Newark, Mayor Rice Baraka, is actually going to put some money aside towards an educational program to make sure that people are actually aware of the process and what it takes and how they're affected, because people fear what they just don't know. That's how you cause mass hysteria. So if you're educated, you feel more confident in what your leaders are doing, what your neighbors are doing, what your city is doing, what your state is doing. So there is going to be mixed results, because you have someone like me who says, okay, I know what's going on, but then you have my neighbor who just doesn't know. So, like I said, it's mixed results, but that's just a result of people not understanding what's going on. Because honestly, when you mentioned Flint, and they're not going to be satisfied because their entire city is not going to be, restructured. Whereas Newark, they're changing the entire city in a 3-year period. That's literally unheard of. It's awesome, but it's unheard of. So I would encourage people to be, happy, but I'm not also going to tell anyone how to feel, because that's your child that may be affected. That's your mother or your father, whatever family member is affected. And I cannot tell you, do not be upset that maybe your family member was exposed to lead and has high lead levels in their blood. I would not be the person I am if I said, don't be upset because they're doing everything they can. I can say, I would love for you to be open-minded that we're trying to rectify the situation. Go ahead.
Can we talk about the differences between Flint and New York?
Yeah. Okay, so in Flint, and I know that people have compared Newark to Flint, but it's literally not the same thing. Flint didn't even have control over their water source. So with Flint, the water source was taken over by a neighboring town. And I can't give you the specific details because I don't know them specifically. I don't know if they said, let's save money, let's do this, either way, they cut corners. And they intentionally let, this population be poisoned. Whereas Newark is completely different. No one took over Newark's water supply. Newark didn't hand it over to anyone. They weren't trying to cut corners, I would say, per se. We have an old infrastructure. And additionally with Flint, they were trying to kind of cover it up. Newark is like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We care about our residents. We want to make sure that they're safe. We want to make sure that they are able to drink healthy water. They are able to not suffer the health issues that come with it, like, irreversible cognitive brain damage, low red blood cell levels, kidney damage, those things that affect us. So it's a completely different thing. In Flint, people were trying to cut corners in a huge way and then cover up the corners that they were cutting. Whereas in Newark, it's like, okay, let's take direct action. We have all this money that we're doing in this condensed period of time to fix the problem. That hasn't happened in Flint, and that's the reason why people are kind of upset. You mentioned it being upset.
So the origin, my understanding of the origin of the Newark problem is that the pH got too high. So you have two different factors. You put a chemical in.
They put in another chemical to try to lower it, and it kind of messed up the chemical that they need for coating.
It lowers the pH. Corrodes the pipe.
Yes.
And then we have to add more anti-corrosive.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a great chef.
Yeah, that perfect balance.
Half art and half science.
Yeah.
To get it right.
So they tried to fix one problem, and it kind of created another one. Because they were trying to, like you said, lower the pH, but it was too strong for the coating. So, by chance, by trying to fix one problem, they created another one. So it wasn't intentional. No one was trying to poison anybody. No one was trying to cut corners per se. That's what I say about Flint. They were trying to cut corners. But they were trying to fix a problem and created another one. So instead they're like, we're just going to fix everything at one time. And yes.
Why is lead used in water pipes?
Oh, it was used a long time ago. But
Until the
86.
Why lead?
Well, honestly, when we initially started using lead, no one knew the effects of lead, right? So that's why we had leaded gas. That's why, the leaded pencils, lead paint, everything was lead because, technology has advanced so much. So you sit there and you say, oh my God, how could they not know? But at one point in time, we just did not know. And then I think was it the 70s where they kind of stopped it, and then it wasn't until 1986 where they said, okay, there's no fixtures, there's nothing like that, everything must stop. But when it comes to lead, it's not like, and I mentioned last, it's not like the lemon law. When you think about cars, they don't have to disclose to you, hey, you're going to be exposed to lead. And that's another thing that's important that, we should work towards, because as someone selling you or renting you a property, I should hold you accountable in some way. That's such a huge health risk to me, to my family, to my kids. And, I want to raise my family in this community. And there's not even a law that says you have to tell me that I'm going to be exposed to something that could cause my child brain damage, right? It's just for paint. No, water. I'm talking about water. The lead pipes. Because then when you move in there and they say, oh, you have lead pipes. And then it's up to you as a homeowner, if you purchase this home, to replace it. And that also depends on where you live, honestly. It depends.
Is majority lead pipes?
Oh, yeah, our country was built in lead pipes. It's not that they never. If there's a situation like Newark seems so colossal, but there's situations literally around the country. They may not be as big as Flint, but there are situations, there are towns throughout the state, there are towns throughout the country. Right now, we're even working on Trenton because they have a lead service line problem. And as much as you think that it's an isolated incident just because Newark is like all over the news and has so much media attention. It's not. We're in Trenton and Camden and even affluent neighborhoods like Ridgewood. Everything was made with lead structure, but it also depends on the economic status of that neighborhood. So they may be able to rectify the situation before it hits like national news, whereas a town that's predominantly low income doesn't have that opportunity. We need to get outside funding to rectify the situation.
To get City of Newark to gain ready clean water action to serve as to follow what's happening?
Yeah, so it's okay. So initially, when everything kind of like became like known, like, oh my God, this needs to be done. We have elevated lead levels. What are we going to do for the residents? So there was a group of organizations, a coalition of people, we'll leave it at that, that wanted to, and their intentions were good. They wanted to kind of like sue the city, like, no, this is wrong. And justifiably, it's like, no, we want to make sure the residents are safe. But Clean Water Action said we don't want to sue the residents because by the time litigation and everything goes through, the residents are still exposed. So how about we partner with you to make sure that we're on the ground? Because Clean Water Action, we're really big with canvassing. We have our boots on the ground. We raise money. We are really proud to not work with polluters. That's something that we're really excited about and we take pride in. And we said, you know what, how about we partner with you, put boots on the ground and get as many people educated. It's not just sign them up for the lead program to get their pipes replaced, but get them also educated about what's going on. Yes.
I have to disagree with your view because the reason why people in Newark were upset is because for 2 years, Newark denied that there was a problem. The mayor was saying, this situation is not like Flint. I drink the water. The water is safe. My mother drinks it. My family drinks it, which was not the case. It got from about 2016 to 2018 that the mayor had to admit that the levels were very high. Even today, as of a few days ago, they changed some of the pipes in the Pequannock. And because the water was testing without lead, the mayor is now saying the water is safe. The water is not safe for everybody. It's only safe for those whose lead pipes were changed. So people in Newark feel deceived and continue to feel deceived because no amount of lead is safe. So this is what's happening in Newark. And the residents, and there's 4 wards, the residents, 5 wards.
Yeah.
The East Ward, they're saying, does not get their water from Pequannock, so they're not affected. Now, I went to the hearing. There was two days of hearings. The organization that people were challenging Newark that they should not give out the water to the east side. Just yesterday, I found out that they changed one of the pipes in the East Ward. So if you're saying that it doesn't affect that area because they're getting their water from Wanakee, why are you changing the pipe? That makes people think there's not accurate information being given. So now what the East Ward has to do is unite and find out from the city what is going on. And I just wanted you to answer one question.
Of course.
At that hearing, one of the specialists mention the word blending. Could you explain what is blending? Because to me, it sounds like the two, a little bit from the Pequannock, can come over and blend into the other waters.
Okay, so you have like so many things I have to comment on. Okay, so as far as blending, even if you blend your water from another water supply, multiple water supplies, the fact is it's the pipes, it's not the water. So that's what the issue is, and I know that it sounds maybe deceitful or in a sense, but when the mayor says that the water is not affected, it's not water. It's literally the lead pipes. And that's kind of the misconception behind it. So it may come off as being deceitful, but it's literally not the water. It's not the water supply. And then another thing you touched on, the reason that it may seem suspicious because they're replacing the East Ward, which is the ward that you're talking about, that you said has to unite, because they still have lead infrastructure, but they just had a different coating. So instead of revisiting this problem in a decade or whenever maybe that coating doesn't work anymore, or it erodes, or for some reason the pH is off again and we have to revisit it again. So instead of saying until we wait until a problem happens in the East Ward, we're just going to change the entire city's infrastructure.
They did change that one house.
No, they're not done yet. They're not done yet.
Well, they haven't told people in the East Ward that there could be a problem.
Yeah, they did start with the wards that were most affected, that had the highest parts per billion. So you saw like a lot of pipes being changed in like the West Ward and the South Ward. So it's not to say that they're forgotten, we don't care, but they are going to go to the residents that are most affected by it. So I mean, it may not seem fair, it may seem suspicious, but it's kind of like, in this instance, the last shall be first, because, they had such high parts per billion. In some parts, I know we tested, it was in the North Ward, it was up to 90 parts per billion. That's a long hop from 15 parts per billion. That's a long hop. So as much as we want to change everybody at the same exact time, for one, contractors, we started off with those initial phases with 3 different organizations contracted out to change the water pipes, the lead service line. But now we have to the city has to contract more people, right? More organizations, more companies. But they're not just gonna send anyone out there. So now we have to make sure that they're gonna do their job, that they are qualified. So that takes time in itself, but they do have a quota, which is they need to replace 25 to 30 lines a day. That's their quota. As far as the companies are concerned, 25 to 30 lines a day. But we have to make sure that we have the companies in order, because we started off with 3, which they did start replacing lines. And we need to make sure that residents are signing up at a rate where they can meet that quota. So we will get to the East Ward. They will get to the East, because I forgot I switched positions, so it's not way anymore. But they will get to the East Ward, but the wards that are most affected have to come first. It's not saying that we're not gonna replace the East Ward. It's not saying, because you're less affected. And it's not a matter of someone being deceitful. It's just that, your water supply comes from a different area, so the coating is different. Even if it's blended, you're still less susceptible to the lead exposure, especially up to as high as 90 parts per billion, than someone who is their only water supply. Blended or not, it's still less likely to affect the residents in the East Ward. And I can't say anything about denying anything, but I can say that when he says it's not the water, it's literally not the water. It's the lead infrastructure.
So it sounds like there needs to be a solid communication plan, almost like your marketing plan.
Yeah.
And getting out to people to explain. It's almost like he was parsing it, like it's not the water.
Yeah.
But it's something else. But just being transparent.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, well, I know that is one of the reasons why they're trying to allocate money and funding towards an educational program, because there are a lot of questions. And if I'm a person who doesn't know the insides, I don't know parts per billion. I don't know what Pequannock is. I don't know what Wanacue is. I hear lead water and I'm freaking out, right? And then I hear someone say, oh, you don't have lead water. And then me not knowing the difference between the water and the pipes being affected, that causes confusion. You know what I'm saying? So I completely agree. There needs to be a set forum where everyone is on the same page. I do know that they do have community forums where people can attend. The mayor holds information sessions. I don't know how often, but it's still, you have to make it there, right? And not everyone can make it there. So we are trying to put together and allocate funding to make sure that people can go to those homes. You know, if you're a homeowner who's 90 years old and you cannot make it out your house, we need to bring that information to you. If you are a homeowner who speaks a different language and you know, you turn on the TV and maybe, you know, you haven't heard it by word of mouth, we need to be able to reach you. I know when I was the field director, I used to tell my staff, there's no reason in 2019 that a resident, a homeowner, should not have access to clean water simply because there's a language barrier, right? So I used to make them download the Google Translate app. And, you know, I even went to a door one time and she was like, she speaks Greek. Not a problem. You know, I want you to be just as healthy. It doesn't matter your economic status. It doesn't matter your zip code. It doesn't matter your race, your religion, your age. It literally should not matter. In 2019, who decides who is healthy, right? And being able to drink tap water from the tap, not through a filter, not through a bottle, because believe it or not, bottled water is not controlled. And if I want to sit there and go to my backyard and put water in a bottle and call it Tia Springs, it's bottled water, right? So it's not monitored in the way that you would think. And Tia Springs may be full of lead, but this is another reason that should prompt people to, you know, support the lead service line replacement program. And like you, those were reasonable questions. And you're speaking for an entire ward, and I think that's awesome. And, you know, the fact that you're here and you can bring this information back to them, like we haven't forgotten about you, but we have, you know, children and pregnant women and elderly that are exposed to a higher part per billion that need to be, you know, tended to first.
I don't want you to think that they are saying that the East Ward is not going to be taken care of.
Yeah.
They're saying the East Ward, because you get water from another source,
Mhm.
we are not going to make the effort to change your pipes. What we want you to do is, they're saying it now, get the water tested.
Mhm.
So, and I really think that I'm correct, because I just talked to the councilman of the East Ward who said yesterday that he wasn't even aware, and he was upset because he wasn't aware that one of the pipes in that particular house was in the East Ward. Now, they should have let the councilman know your ward is affected, whereas the message is going out, your ward is not affected.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that makes people upset, that there is not clear information. Now, I went to a meeting in the West Ward District.
Mhm.
One of the councilmen sent his representative to talk about the water situation. He started off by saying, first of all, let me say, the water situation is not critical. Now, how can you say drinking contaminated water is not critical?
Yeah.
And, you know, I was digging in my pocketbook, and when he said that, I went, he said, oh, you seem like you're surprised. I didn't say anything, let him finish. He said it again. the exact words, this is not a critical situation.
It is.
Now, he is speaking from the administration's point of view, but it's incorrect. Any amount of lead
Is unacceptable.
is unacceptable.
And it's a cumulative effect, especially for homes that still have like lead paint, right? But as far, and I just want to, the entire country was built with lead pipes. So I don't know who would say the East Ward is not affected, because I mean, I know why they would say it. They mean like you're not an immediate as far as when you compare it to the other 4 wards in Newark, but every ward has lead infrastructure pipes. Like that's the reality of it. It's not just Newark. It's literally throughout the state, throughout the country. So I don't know who would say you're not affected. What I'm gonna say is you're less affected at this present time. Now in 10 years, 20 years, when the coating may not work any longer, then that's where that lead will start leaching into the water. And that's why they're saying to prevent a situation like that, what we're going through right now with the other 4 wards, let's fix the entire city now. We're gonna do that in a 3-year period. So maybe if the first 2 years, and I don't know the breakdown of how they're gonna do it, but if in the first 2 years they say, hey, we're gonna focus on south, west, and north right now, and then we'll focus the last year on east and central. I don't know the breakdown, but if they did that, I would understand why, because the parts per billion are so high, and the exposure in those areas because of their water source it causes that community to be way more affected than someone in the East Ward. So yeah, you're affected in a sense that you have lead pipes. You cannot not be affected, but you're less affected because of where your water supply comes from. So it's a yes, you're affected, and a no, you're not affected. If that makes any type of sense. Yes.
Can you talk about the the phrase last quarter mile or whatever it is? Because you talk about replacing the pipes, you're talking about the pipes under the streets, right? Not
Yes.
the pipe from the street to the house.
Okay.
There's 2 issues.
Yes. Okay. So.
3 issues.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Honestly, there's more issues than you think, because you think about old schools. They have like the water fountains that have like lead fixtures, right? So things like that, still there, that's something. But then as far as with the way the lead replacement line program worked is, so the city, in the middle of every street, there's this really, really, really big pipe. That is what was owned by the city. And we're talking specifically about Newark, because depending on what I'm about to say, depending on where you reside, it's different, right? So the homeowner actually in Newark is responsible for where the pipe connects, the lead service line pipe connects from that main up into the middle of the street, all the way into their house. Now, if you live in Irvington, the city actually is responsible up until like the property line. So it literally depends on where you're residing at. But yeah, so it's the lead service line in apartment buildings, schools, things like that, like older. It's not necessarily the lead pipes because of the material that they were made out of. It's the bigger infrastructures like apartment buildings. They're not as affected, right? Because it's the smaller pipes that sit in like 1-family home, 2-family home, 3-family homes that are most at risk. It's not a huge apartment building that they're less at risk because they have more water flowing through and they're made with different pipes because the pipes are bigger. Yeah. Yeah, nobody's talking about everything. Yeah, so I actually am not an expert on Irvington. I'm just not, I started with the Newark lead service line. I just know the differences in towns, what the city is responsible for when it comes to replacing the service pipes. Yeah. I can check on that for you. No, I do not. Do you know where they get? Yeah. How did everybody forget about I actually do not. That's not my area of expertise, I'm sorry.
But again, it's not where the water comes from, it's where it flows through, it's the pipes.
So the question is simply, is Irvington serviced by the Quad Reservoir where all the problems are? or water or something else?
I believe it may be something else because I've heard as far as Pequannock and Wanacue, you hear about Hillside, Bloomfield, Montclair, never Irvington. So I'm not sure where they get their water supply from or the water source from, but I'm gonna take like an educated guess and say, since it's never been mentioned, it's definitely not Wanacue or Pequannock.
This was
And Greg, I'm glad you're here. Because
She's so
20 years
cute.
ago, homeowners were told that they would bring the sample of their water to our water department and it would be tested for lead. We had to put it in a vial before you flush the toilet in the morning, before you brush your teeth. It was the first water that came out of the tap. Because many of us live in older homes in Montclair, it's from the curb to your house. It also has lead pipes. Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, different houses, it was all different. But even though the town of Montclair has changed the water mains and the laterals, there are some houses and apartments that still interior to the buildings have some lead solder in those pipes. And that testing still goes on. Actually, Gary Obzarni still sends out tests, and the Environmental Commission still volunteers to do testing once a year. So they are still doing those tests.
How do we take advantage of that? I mean,
What's that?
how do we take advantage of having our water tested?
Well,
Where do you reside? In Montclair?
you would hire a company to do a test for you, and then they would supply you with a bottle, and then you would do that process where you would turn your tap on first thing in the morning, and fill it up for a sample and send it to them, and they would test for you.
I just want to say, I've tried for years to get my water tested, because I had my own personal issue with it. And Tia hooked me up with a lab that did, but I called, so many people are only commercial, they only do certain ones, I couldn't find, maybe I was one of more people, but I finally did, and I put it in like the Poland spring water, Ron dropped it off, we are safe.
Congratulations. Huh?
Company in Hillside does it all.
State laboratory, I can give you the information.
Chestnut Street.
Anyways.
Congratulations.
Yes, I was going to say, approximately a year and a half ago, there was a big thing about lead, and we were testing all the children, and any children that, I work in a pediatric office. So any of our patients, we were testing for lead, because of the lead in the water back then. This is going back about a year and a half. You know, we really didn't find anybody. We have some kids with high lead levels, but it comes more from the paint in houses. And what I do want to emphasize is that I know I'm not saying that it's good to have lead in the water, but I think we've become so frenzied about it that we overkill. It's lead in the water is the most affected population of children under 5 because the brains are still developing. And lead does affect the brain. So those of us who are adults who are drinking tap water, it's really not going to affect us very much. And so there's certain populations, and maybe the elderly and the frail, but it's really the children that are the most affected because they're still growing and their brains are still growing.
I had a conversation with someone earlier. She was like, I grew up in the Bronx. We had lead. Like, she was like, and I'm still here. She was like, I remember it was like, I forgot. I think she said we had like 15 parts per billion she was talking about. And she was like, I'm still here. It's like calcium. It's good for my bones. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, okay. She was like, tell them that. And I was like, I'm not telling people that calcium, that lead is good for their bones, right? But Marianne is actually, yeah, calcium, lead's good for your bones. I don't know. Yeah, lead infrastructure of the body. Well, that's another chapter 2, right? But Marianne is correct. So you're actually more affected by lead through paint because you inhale it, right? It's going directly into your lungs. You're breathing it in. But when you think about lead water, it's a cumulative thing when you put it with lead paint. So it's a whole bunch. Honestly, look at the area that we are in right now. And we're talking about more than just lead, and we're talking about more than just Newark, because as a neighboring town, a town that's close, the wind blows, we're all going to be affected in some manner. We're so close to Newark houses one of the largest garbage incinerators in the entire East Coast, right? So that's right there. That's something. And then when you put ports, look how close we are to the ports. Those ships coming in and out, right? And then when you look at the trucks from the diesel fuel, right? We're so close to different cities, and Newark is a city. And I know that I believe it's one new truck built after 2012 actually is the equivalent of 17 old trucks. So, you know, you try to fight with companies like, hey, can you have new trucks? Right? But it costs money, and they don't want to do that. And then when you add the lead paint and the lead water, it's like so many different aspects. And I know we're talking about Newark right now and the immediate neighboring towns, but like I said, wind blows. We're all going to be affected in some way, believe it or not. And I know that people may say, like, well, I don't live in Newark, so, you know, why should I care? My town is okay. My house is okay. Like, she's here, and it's awesome, and I love you for coming. But you have people who say, we tested our water, and I'm okay, so I'm just going to sit at home because this doesn't apply to me, right? But she still came out here. And that says a lot about, you. But there are people who sit home and say, I'm not affected. I know the last time I came here, someone asked, well, why didn't they do anything? Why aren't people gathering? And da-da-da. It came down to, in different cities, like funding. Like, you have cities that they're not saying, which I can't put thoughts in people's head, but they're not saying we don't care about the residents or our constituents altogether, but we just don't have the capacity or the money to sit there and, rectify the situation as immediately as people would hope, and that's what it boils down to. Does anybody have any more questions? No? Okay.
Clean Water Action's here, and the League of Women Voters and Sierra Club put this together, and that you're going to televise it. That's really good, because then you're getting the information out to all those populations of people that you said you can't knock on their door. So that's really good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And how do we get more information about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, actually, while I'm here, I'm going to do a little advertising, right? So, Clean Water Action, we have a website. So, like I said, we're one of the largest environmental organizations around the country. We are actually the organization that's responsible for the 1972 Clean Water Act. So, we have 2 office locations. There's one actually right here in Montclair on Bloomfield Ave. It's literally like 5 minutes from here. We also have another office location in Long Branch, New Jersey. If you go, we have our website on the papers that I gave you, I believe. We do. It's right on the bottom on the back, www.cleanwateraction.org, New Jersey. Thank you.